sermon would be so much easier if my mommy would listen to it from the porch with the door shut. Because we're not talking about selfishness, and I'm sorry that your copy had that on it. I don't know where you got that copy from, I'm sorry. The topic is the temptations of two different individuals. One is Joseph, and the other is Amnon. And specifically, the way that these two men dealt with the temptation of sexual sin. In both cases, neither of them were married to the woman that was, either of the women that were in the discussion, and they handled it handled the situation very, very differently. So we'll look at it. First, the situation with Joseph. And there's much more to this story, but he is in charge of Potiphar's household. He has worked his way up. God has worked with him and blessed him in all that he has done. He is the man. He works his way up from servant to butler to head butler to in charge of all of the affairs of the guy that owns the house. And he even in Scripture calls him an equal. The only thing that the man has, or one of the very few only things that the man has that Joseph does not have, is that man's wife. And we'll pick up the story in Genesis chapter 39 and verse 7. After that time, his master's wife cast her eyes on Joseph and said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's wife, "Behold, because of me, my master has no concern about anything in the house. He has put me over everything that he has in my charge. And he is not greater in this house than I am, nor has he kept back anything from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" And as she spoke to Joseph day after day, he would not listen to her and lie beside her or to be with her. But one day, when he went into the house to do his work, none of the men of the house was there in the house. She caught him by his garment and said, "Lie with me." But he left the garment in her hand and fled and got out of the house. I can tell you how many stories I have heard because of the sermons that my partner likes to listen to at work. They love the story of Joseph, and whatever you got to leave behind, make sure that you don't sin. And that is the topic of so many sermons. That won't be the specific topic of this morning's sermon, but it's a good thought, right? She had a hold of him, and he got away. He escaped. He did whatever it took, and that meant leaving evidence behind. That meant leaving his job, his security, everything behind, because it was going to be a problem. It would have meant sin for him. Very different interaction. Amnon. Now Absalom, David's son, had a beautiful sister, and her name was Tamar. After a time, Amnon, David's son, loved her. And Amnon was so tormented that he made himself ill because of his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin. It seemed impossible for Amnon to do anything to her. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, and the son of Shimeah, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very crafty man. And he said to him, "O son of the king, why are you so haggard morning after morning? Will you not tell me?" And Amnon said, "I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister." And Jonadab said, "Lie on your bed and pretend to be ill. And when your father comes to see you, say to him, 'Let my sister Tamar come and give me bread to eat and prepare the food in my sight that I may see it and eat it from her hand.' So Amnon lay down and pretended to be ill. And when the king came to see him, Amnon said to the king, 'Please let my sister Tamar come and make a couple of cakes in my sight that I may eat it from her hand.' David sent home to Tamar, saying, 'Go to your brother Amnon's house and prepare food for him.' So Tamar went down to her brother Amnon's house, and while he was lying down, she took dough and kneaded it and made cakes in his sight and baked the cakes. And she took the pan and emptied it out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, 'Send everyone out from before me.' So everyone went out from before him, and Amnon said to Tamar, 'Bring the food into the chamber that I may eat from your hand.' And Tamar took the cakes that she had made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. But when she brought them near to him to eat, he took hold of her and and said to her, "Come lie with me, my sister." She answered him, No, my brother, do not violate me, for such a thing is not done in Israel. Do not do this outrageous thing. As for me, where could I carry my shame? As for you, you would be as one of the outrageous fools in Israel. Now therefore, please speak to the king, for he will not withhold me from you. But he would not listen to her, and being stronger than she, he violated her and lay with her. And Amnon hated her with very great hatred. So the hatred with which he hated her was greater than the love with which he had loved her. And Amnon said, "Get up, go." Two very different interactions. It's always great for you to read a story at church. So please be with me in my nerves. There are two different interactions here, and obviously Joseph took a proper path. And I'm not saying that the only sin here that Amnon had was his forcefulness, but he didn't try. So we're going to look at the scriptures and look at, these are two completely different scenarios. One is stacked against the action of sin. Stacked all in the favor of this makes it real easy to sin. The other situation, sin is actually a difficult thing to come by and has all kinds of collateral damage to find it. First, the temptation. What is the temptation? In Joseph's situation, the woman approaches him. Well, there's a willing participant there, so at least that makes it a little easier to understand, but it makes it much more difficult to deal with the sin. Whenever you have a partner who is going to offer themselves, you got half the equation there. After a time, she says, "Lie with me." So she's willing, as opposed to Tamar. But she approaches him. They can be deceitful together and figure this thing out, how to make this work. That has to be a temptation to Joseph. After all, no one is greater in the house. No one is greater in the house than he. The only thing that he doesn't have, that the master of the house does have, is what? Is this woman. Well, then they're completely and 100% equals. If the master of the house and Joseph, who's running the house, also share the same woman, then they have absolutely nothing different between themselves. This would put Joseph on a higher plane, or a perfectly even plane, with the master of the house, wouldn't it? Then they would have Joseph would have absolute control over every single little bitty thing. They even share the woman. That's a great that temptation goes beyond the physical lust or the desire for the sex. This is going to be a matter of prestige, of power, of placement. This is a very, very much a temptation, and she's offering it. None of that. It's easy to arrange. She's the wife of the master. She can arrange the house, and obviously she does. She kicks all the guys out at one point. But he's also in charge of the house. And at some point, he has control over what goes on and can make sure that everybody's busy next Thursday and that there's nobody in the house. Arranging this to conceal themselves would not be a difficult thing whatsoever. David with Bathsheba, as we read Psalm 51 this morning, he didn't have a very difficult time. He just sent Bathsheba's husband into battle, put him right up front and had him killed. This is even easier than that. We just work out the work schedules and make sure everybody's milking cows or goats or shearing sheep or whatever. She's also not a virgin. She is the wife of the man of the house. Hiding this would be even easier than what David had to deal with. There seems to be absolutely no consequence physically that Joseph could have to deal with. What if she got pregnant? She's got a husband. He stays with her too. There should be, theoretically, no ramification physically of this world that could come back against Joseph. you see how easy this is. And here she is offering herself. Not only is it the physical gratification that he's going to get, but also the prestige of the house that is going to be offered to him. The result is that as the temptation is offered, as the situation comes to a point, when it becomes that point where, okay, I either turn left or right. I either do this thing or I do not do this thing. He leaves even his garment and flees the house. The result after that is that he is thrown into prison. Obviously, he loses his job. That's the end of the story for Potiphar and his wife. So the result did not turn out the way he wanted it to. In fact, in fleeing the situation or in refusing this woman repetitively, he has destroyed his physical life. He's gone from being the master of this household who had some kind of placement in the world. I mean, he had servants, he had slaves, he had an amount of means because Joseph was over them. Plus, he was being blessed by God since Joseph was in the house with him. Joseph gives everything up to walk away and not sin. So it was a big deal. And sometimes it can feel like you have to walk away from your entire life to keep yourself doing what is right. And that is the example that Joseph offers. Amnon, on the other hand, is completely the opposite. To start with, on the base level, he desired her. She didn't desire him, but he desired her. Thing is, it's not just that he desired her. It's not just that he looked and said, she sure is pretty. He dwelt on the matter. The word that is used for love here is a very, I can't tell you how aggravating this word study was to do this word study because it means it's in the middle of some other things in Hebrew is funny and that's no fun. Long story short, it is the word that he loved her is beyond that he cared. It's beyond that he had affection. It's that it was affecting him and what he was doing. Which makes sense when you put it with the rest of the scripture there. It made him sick. He was sick on his, we would say he was sick on his stomach, but he made himself sick thinking about it. He didn't change his focus. He didn't try to do anything else. He woke up in the morning, thought about her all day long, and went to sleep at night. What would you say to someone who's doing that? Change your mind. Whenever someone is grieving, one of the things we try to do is change the focus of what they're thinking about. Please try to take your mind off of this thing and look in any other direction, because it will give you at least a momentary thought of not this thing that you're dwelling on. Just try to occupy your mind with anything else for a period of time. But he doesn't do that. He focuses on this thing. And he knows he can't deal with her or have a relationship with her. First of all, there's like 3 other scriptures that discuss how this relationship was going to be incestuous. That's pretty disgusting. The way that the scripture reads here is that it's Absalom's sister, so it's actually David is both Tamar and Amnon. David's the father in both cases. They have different mothers. So does that make it any better? No. Scripture is actually very clear about that in Leviticus, that's still no bueno. Now, Abraham and Sarah were both related, but anymore this is not allowable. So how her offer later makes any sense sounds more like an excuse than anything, or just a forestallment. But there's another problem here. So Amnon should have known this, and it's just another thing to stand in the way. Look at all of the things in Amnon's story that stand in the way. First of all, She's got no desire for him, or none that we read of. Second of all, she's a virgin. There's going to be ramifications for that. I mean, they even dress differently as virgins. Sexuality and virginity in our culture, whatever your status is typically a kept quiet thing. And anymore, in the last 10 or 15 years, virgins are assaulted for not having any experience. It's completely opposite of this, where Tamar is going to wear a long robe with long sleeves to prove, or not to prove, but to show that she is still pure, that she is still a virgin, that she is technically available for marriage. But it was something that they kind of bragged about a little bit. He's going to ruin that. He's going to change her whole wardrobe. It's difficult to arrange. How is he going to do this? They don't even live in the same house. So how is this going to happen? It's so difficult to arrange that the guy who comes up with the plan is even given the label as being crafty. Now, I guess he was crafty before this, but the Bible specifically points out that it's not just Jonadab, and it's not just Jonadab the son of Shimeah, but he's a crafty fellow, and he has a knack for being able to get things done mentally. This is not going to be concealable, and the shame that he is going to wear afterwards is to be known. Outrageous, viewed as one of the outrageous fools in Israel, and even offers another solution. So other than the things that impede him continuing in these actions, she offers a solution that would make more sense. Look, I am a virgin, I could be available, we could get married if David chooses to violate the law, which apparently he doesn't have as much of a problem bending for sex anyway. So just go talk to him and see what can be done. He still refuses. As for me, where would I carry my shame? If you ever get kidnapped. When you get kidnapped, one of the things that, if you watch any documentaries or things that offer, if you're traveling abroad, is if you're taken hostage or whatever, what you try to do is make a personal connection with the person who is holding you for ransom or for whatever reason. If you can become a human to them as opposed to an object, then it makes it harder for them to hurt you. And in verse 13, Tamar makes a plea to his conscience. Where can I carry my shame? Think about me. Think about what this is going to do to me. Think about what this is going to do to you. This may be the first time that his mind has even got off the interaction that he wants to have. She's offering him a different mindset and saying, this is a bad idea. Think about all of the consequences that are going to happen. The result is that he still rapes her. The result after that is that he hates her. And the result 2 years after that is that Absalom kills him. Didn't work out as well as he had hoped. Still, the temptation is the same. So what does God say? First of all, God does not condemn sex. It's not something that was put into the world so that we would have a built-in temptation and life would be harder. Here, at least everyone can have this obstacle. Sex is supposed to be enjoyed. It is given confines. Let marriage be held in honor among all. Let the marriage bed be undefiled, and God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. For the people who are living not quite as old as Tamar, but the next generation down from her, Proverbs 5 discusses, drink from your own cistern, flowing water from your own well. That is the absolute opposite of abstinence in marriage. You're supposed to enjoy it. Please enjoy it the way God has told you to enjoy it. You just got a prescription from the preacher to go do that. I hope you enjoy that. Should your springs be scattered abroad, or streams of water in the streets? There's your discussion of promiscuity. Let them be for yourself alone and not for strangers with you. Why is there only one person mentioned here? because the two shall even become one flesh. The one relationship is the acceptable place. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth. Let your fountain be blessed is definitely not a thought of abstinence in marriage. A lovely, dear, graceful doe, let her breast fill you at all times with delight, be intoxicated always in her love. Does that sound at all like religions in times past where sex is only used for reproduction? That doesn't sound scientific, or there's no reproductive language in there whatsoever. That's about physical pleasure. Luckily, God defines marriage for us. The rib that the Lord had taken from the man, made into woman, and brought her to the man. The man said, this at last is bone of my bones, flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man will leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. This is what a marriage is. This is God's definition of what a marriage is. It's not Adam and Steve. It's Adam and Eve. If you'd like to use the cliche, there's one man, there's one woman. There's not one man and 8 women. There's not 2 men and 1 woman, or whichever math you'd like to do on that. There's not 2 men, there's not 2 women. This is the way that God defines marriage. Sex outside of that marriage, or outside of that union of 1 man and 1 woman, is fornication and is condemned by God. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. Therefore, a man will leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife. Hey, it sounds familiar. And the two shall become one flesh. They are no longer 2, but 1 flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. Doing so, or finding a relationship, physical relationship outside of that, is also a problem. This is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor, not in the passion of lust like the Gentiles who do not know God. It's even gone on and explained in another scripture that if you have problems keeping your mind on things that are not Tamar, or keeping yourself pure, then go ahead and get married. Who talks like that? Just go ahead and get married, so that you can satisfy your urges. And yet the Bible would sanction that more than the sin that is sexual immorality. Oh, be careful, little eye, what you see. You've heard it said, you should not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks on a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery in his heart. Isn't that what happens when you watch pornography? Isn't that how sex sells? Isn't that why Hardee's gets so many hamburgers sold? I like Hardee's hamburgers. It had nothing to do with commercials at all. I worked there before they had dumb commercials. Be careful, little eye, what you see. What you feed into your mind is the same thing, is the same type of thing that Amnon was feeding into his mind. Can you tell me that Amnon was sitting there making himself sick, thinking about what color gown she was wearing? Or do you think he was rather had his mind centered on how he would like the interaction to go, or how he could get it to work, or where they might be whenever he could get this encounter to happen? Be careful what you feed the light. Be careful what you feed the eye, because it is supposed to be letting light into the body, light into the soul. And when you're feeding it garbage, you're going to sit there and stew on it like Amnon did. Do not desire her beauty in your heart, and do not let her capture you with her eyelashes. There's actually studies that have been done that say that pornography rewires your brain. Because you're watching fantastic meaning over the top, not wonderful or good, because you're watching these exotic fantasies, you are rewiring your brain to think that all encounters should be that way. It's a scientific thing. Who knew? It's a rewiring of your brain so that you will find less and less satisfaction in the wholesome relationship that you do have or that you are supposed to be enjoying it with. Let not steadfast love and faithfulness forsake you. Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, so that you find favor and good success in the sight of God and man. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not lean on your own understanding. This is where you fix things. If Amnon would have spent as much time sitting on his bed praying as he did sitting on his bed stewing over a woman that he shouldn't have and can't properly have according to the laws of God, if he would have focused on God, he would have had a much easier time. He would have made it difficult for himself to continue with his actions. And sometimes you just need to make it difficult for yourself to sin. That is one of the solutions of sinning. If you just make it difficult to sin, it's more difficult. However, like Amnon, if you want to, you'll go through all of those roadblocks, those obstacles, and the things that you put in your way. You'll go out of your way to be stupid if you choose to be stupid. Nothing's going to stop you. Except your relationship with God. If you focus on your relationship with God, it makes it much more difficult to hit the play button or to pull up the garbage on your phone. One of the things that I heard recently, within the last couple of years, a preacher was talking about us being created, about our interaction with one another. Said that he had a difficult time because he's married, not married, because he's a man. He has a difficult time looking at women and making sure that he can go, okay, look, your hair looks very nice today. And being able to stop there. And one of the things that made it easier for him, or one of the things that he continued to tell himself was, that's a daughter of God. We're all created in his image. And in one instance or another, in one sense or another, whether you're a Christian or not, you're all an offspring of God. You've all, as humans, been created in his image. And in that vein, that's a daughter of God. That makes it much easier to say how reprehensible that a daughter of God would film herself or have someone film her doing terrible things. A daughter of God that looks very beautiful, and if God's watching because he's dad, how would Daddy feel about the way I'm thinking about her? And of course you can flip that around. Some of us are strapping young sons of God, and it's very difficult for ladies as well. Just don't happen to have those feelings, so you're going to have to port them over to understand them a little better. Do not dwell on things. If there's any assistance that you need, because if you think that your physical desires are something that's unique to you, you're just wrong. Most of the people in this building know what sex is. Probably have it. You can keep your own tally. I don't care. But you enjoy it the way that God has said to enjoy it. And if it is that you've been enjoying it not that way, that's not good enough. And you need